Welcome back to the Explainer. So today we are diving into the classic fable of the ant and the grasshopper. But look, we're not just reading a simple fairy tale here. We're going to unpack the really profound, hard life lessons this story teaches us about preparation versus passivity. Because at its core, this is a super powerful study of how the choices we make when things are easy literally dictate our survival when things get tough. Let's start with a crucial question. Why does the sunshine of today often blind us to the storms of tomorrow? That right there is the core theme of our explainer today. It's really all about how we treat our limited time and resources before our own personal winters finally arrive. Because, when life is comfortable, it is incredibly easy to just kind of assume it's always going to stay that way, right? Okay, let's dive into this. Our source material drops us right into summer's deceptive comfort, a warm, grassy meadow during the absolute peak of the season. And honestly, life here feels entirely effortless. The sun's shining, the days are beautifully long, but this environment provides a very deceptive comfort. It basically creates this false sense of permanent security for anyone who isn't paying attention to the fact that, the seasons are inevitably going to change. And this brilliantly illustrates two completely divergent mindsets operating in the exact same space. Over on the left, we've got the ants. Their baseline mindset is pure labor and toil. They are spending all day collecting grains of wheat. Then on the right, you've got the grasshopper, whose baseline is basically just resting in the shade, enjoying tasty treats, singing songs, and supposedly living life to the absolute fullest. So they're sharing the same beautiful summer, but man, they are playing two entirely different games. Just look at the sheer, painful effort the ants willingly embraced here. Their routine was brutally disciplined. Step 1, hurry to the field at first light. Step 2, balance these incredibly heavy grains of wheat on their heads. Step 3, carefully store it all away in the larder. And then step 4, repeat the whole process. They essentially put themselves through this intense, grueling boot camp, day in and day out, all while the sun was still shining. Now contrast all that discipline with the grasshopper's mindset. It is perfectly captured right here where he asks, why waste the sunshine and labor and toil? Come and dance with me, forget about work, enjoy the summer. He didn't just choose to kick back and relax, he was actively mocking the ants' process of preparation. And why? Because in his head, they had plenty of food right now and way more than enough time to prepare later. He literally pitied them for working so hard. As we transition into the middle of summer, these two paths in the grass don't just run parallel anymore. They physically collide. We really start to see the social friction of doing the hard work when everyone else around you is taking the easy way out. I mean, it's one thing to grind in isolation, but it's a whole other ballgame when you're facing direct resistance and ridicule for it. So one day, the physical burden just becomes too much. An ant falls down, completely exhausted and hurt under the massive weight of a grain. The ant politely asks the grasshopper for just a tiny bit of help lifting it up to the nest, but instead of lending a hand, the grasshopper just laughs. He completely ignores the plea and goes right back to playing his music. The hard life lesson hitting us here is that you absolutely cannot expect a safety net from people who refuse to take life seriously. But despite the mockery, the ant responds with this incredibly stoic line, I am helping to lay up food for the winter and recommend you do the same. I mean, that is a definitive, flashing red warning sign. The ant is speaking directly to the importance of personal accountability and foresight. It's this stark reminder that, hey, winter is coming. But of course, the grasshopper completely brushes it off, convinced there's still plenty of time. Let's move to and see how this builds. Because, as we know, time waits for no one. We reach the inevitable shift. Those wonderful summer days do not last forever. The environment is about to drastically change, and that incredibly comfortable meadow, it's about to vanish completely. The circumstances shift with this totally brutal indifference. Summer rapidly fades into autumn, which immediately surrenders right into winter. Suddenly, the sun is hardly seen, the days become incredibly short and gray, and freezing cold snow begins to fall over the entire meadow. Time simply ran out, which is exactly what the ants knew would happen. And what happens to the grasshopper now? Well, he is shivering through a freezing breeze. He frantically tries to cover himself up with some dry leaves, just a completely desperate last-minute solution. But a strong wind comes along and simply blows the leaves right away. This is such a critical lesson for us. Flimsy, last-minute band-aids absolutely fail when true adversity strikes. And it's right in this desperate, freezing moment that the grasshopper finally realizes the ant was right all along. Which brings us to the brutal cost of inaction. When you fail to put in the prep work, you are eventually forced to face the harsh elements with entirely empty hands. That cozy illusion of safety is totally gone, and it's replaced by a chilling, very real threat where your survival is absolutely not guaranteed. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it breaks down the brutal data of survival. Physically, the ant is warm, safe in the nest, and enjoying stored food. Meanwhile, the grasshopper has nowhere to hide, absolutely nothing to eat, and is weak, actively dying of hunger. They both lived in the exact same environment, right? But now they are experiencing two entirely different realities directly born from their own choices. The source material actually describes the grasshopper wailing in total panic. He cries out, "Oh, what shall I do? Where shall I go? I would not live to see another summer." He suddenly realizes that because he didn't store any food for himself, or, help anyone else do it either, he's not going to make it. The absolute panic of realizing your lack of preparation has become a fatal error is just devastating. Facing these hard truths at the door, the ultimate cost of all that wasted sunshine, the grasshopper staggers over to the anthill. He is desperately looking for a bailout from the exact same creatures he spent his entire summer making fun of. But even at death's door, look at his approach. The grasshopper knocks and actually perks up cheerfully. He offers to sing by the fire in exchange for food from their larder. He's still attempting to rely on his entertainment and charm, right? Still trying to sing for his supper instead of having done the actual hard work. And when they refuse his little song, he resorts to begging, bluntly stating that he'll die if they don't let him in. The ants' response here is incredibly telling. They cry out in genuine, impartial surprise. "What in the world were you doing all last summer?" It just perfectly highlights the sheer disconnect between these two mindsets. To the ants, the idea of doing absolutely nothing to prepare for an inevitable winter is literally incomprehensible. And then here is his excuse. "I didn't have time to store any food. I was just so busy playing the music that before I knew, the summer was gone." This perfectly captures that illusion of time we all face, doesn't it? When we're distracted by comfort and immediate entertainment, time just slips right through our fingers. He had the exact same amount of time as the ants, but he squandered the whole shebang on leisure until the season was totally gone. So the crucial point is what happens next. The specific ant, the very same one who had fallen and been laughed at by the grasshopper earlier, looks right at him and says, "All summer long, I worked hard while you made fun of me and sang and danced. There is no warmth or food for you here." And then he shuts the door in his face. Now, this isn't an act of cruelty. It is simply the natural, unchangeable consequence of the grasshopper's own choices. The hard life lesson is super clear. You cannot mock discipline in the summer and then expect to be saved by it in the winter. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly powerful question. When your own winter arrives, because adversity inevitably strikes us all, will you be enjoying the warmth of your preparation, or will you be left out in the cold, knocking on a closed door? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this challenges you to audit your own habits today.